So we are going to use completing the square to identify the vertex of this. Okay? Now, I've had some of you, somebody had an E or something on their quiz, and I wasn't sure where that came from. And also, I know that some of you know that negative b over 2a can find the x value to your vertex. You still have to put it in this form. Okay? So this process is a good process for you to do. And again, the quadratic formula is used to find the zeros, not to find the vertex. So be super careful and kind of read what the directions are asking you to do. And the first thing that we're going to do here is we're going to find the vertex. And the way that I'm going to do that is by completing the square. So I am going to look at this right here. I'm going to look at these first two, and I am going to pull those out. So I have f of x equals, and I am going to focus on this negative 2t squared plus 4t. I'm not going to worry about that 1 yet. I'm just going to leave it off to the side. What I want to look at first is I want to look at how do I get that t squared to be a 1? How do I get rid of that negative 2 that's in front of that t squared? That's what I'm going to factor out, because I have to have 1 in front of that t squared. So I am going to factor out a negative 2 with both of these. Now I'm leaving that 1 completely alone. So I'm going to have negative 2, and then I'm going to have t squared minus 2t. And then I've still got my plus 1 over here. Now, the way that I got this negative 2, I said negative 2 times what gives me positive 4. Okay, so negative 2 times negative 2 gives me positive 4. That's how I got that negative 2t. Okay? Now that I've got that out of the way, now I'm going to use completing the square. So, I'm going to take half of the number that's in front of my t. Not my t squared, I'm taking half of this number right here. What's half of negative 2? Negative 1, and then what's negative 1 squared? 1. So you have to factor out the negative 2 first. Okay? If I had t squared plus 4t, then I would. Okay? But I've got to get this t squared right here. I've got to have it to be a 1 before I can do that. That's why I have to factor out the negative 2. So I focus on this right here, and I take half of that. That's what I take half of. So you've got to factor that out first. That's a good question. Okay. So right here I've got negative 2. I take half of negative 2, which is negative 1, and square that, and I get positive 1. Now, this is a very common mistake right here. Okay. I haven't just added positive 1. What do I have to multiply that positive 1 by? Negative 2. So, in that part that's blue, what have I actually added to that part of the equation? I've added negative 2. Now, I am dealing with the same side of the equation. So I have to undo that negative 2. How do I undo that negative 2? Say it. Add 2. Is that what you were saying? Okay, and I have distributed the negative 2 to get the, so negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. So you're correct. I did have to distribute that. And Kiara, you're correct. I've got to add 2. Okay? So I am adding 2 because that's the opposite of the negative 2. And that is typically an area that students get confused on. So make sure you've got that. Okay, now, once I get to that point, we're usually pretty good. So I have f of x equals negative 2. I'm going to factor t squared minus 2t plus 1. So that factors to t minus 1 squared. and then I have plus 3 on the outside. So what I have done now is I've gotten it to vertex or standard form. I've gotten it to this f of x equals a times a minus h squared plus k. I've gotten it to that form. Now I can identify my vertex. What's my vertex? 1, 3. Okay, 1, 3. Now, my y-intercept is I plug 0 in for t, or I cover up everything with a variable. So what's my y-intercept? My y-intercept, go all the way to my original problem. It's 1. Okay? So I just cover up anything that's got a variable in it, and that's my y-intercept. So my y-intercept is right here. Whoops. That's my y-intercept right there. Okay, so I can write that as 0, 1. Okay, so I've identified my vertex. I've identified my y-intercept. Now, I'm going to look at, yes? Yes, that would be, if you identified it as y-intercept and you just put 1, you'd be fine. That's completely fine. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I need to find my zeros. Okay, I need to find my zeros. What I found before this was my vertex. I found my vertex. Now I need to find my zeros. If I were to try to factor this, and I would always try to factor it, my product, what would my product be? Not 2. Negative 2. My product would be negative 2. What would my sum be? 4. There are no 2 numbers multiplied together that give us negative 2 and added together give us 4. There are no 2 numbers. So I have to use the quadratic formula or completing the square. I'm going to use the quadratic formula because it's easier to me to use the quadratic formula when I have a number in front of the squared value. To me, it's just easier. So I'm going to use the quadratic formula. And my quadratic formula is negative b. This will also be something you were given. Plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay? My a value is in front of my squared term. So what's my a value? My b value is in front of my linear, or my t to the first term. So what's my b value? What's my c value? Positive 1. Okay? So now I'm going to plug this in. So I have negative 4 plus or minus b, which is 4 squared, minus 4 times a times c. And all of that is over 2 times a. Now, my red is what I am plugging in. My purple is the original part of the quadratic formula. So the red is what I plugged in right here. Okay. So now I've got negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 minus 4 times negative 2 times 1. Minus 4 times negative 2 is positive 8 times 1. So that is plus 8. Okay? And all of that is over negative 4. Typically, students do okay until right here. Okay? And And this is the correct answer. It's just not simplified. So negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 24 over negative 4 is the correct answer. It's just not simplified. So now let's look at simplifying it. Can I go to the next screen? Okay, negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 24 over negative 4. I'm going to look at this 24. Okay? Does 24 break down into a perfect square factor? And what I mean by that is something that I can take the square root of. Now 24 breaks down to 2 times 12. But 2 and 12, neither one are perfect squares. So I'm looking for a perfect square. 6 and 4. And which one's perfect? 4. Okay, so I have 4 times 6. What's the square root of 4? 2. So I have negative 4 plus or minus 2 on the square root of 6 over negative 4. Now, what you have to look at are these numbers. Is there anything that goes into all of those numbers? 2. Okay? So, I have negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 6 over negative 2. That is an acceptable final answer. Some students will go one step further and do negative 2 over negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 6 over negative 2. So I could have 1, and that would be acceptable. Okay? So here is okay, and here is okay. Okay? Now, my vertex, I'm graphing. I'm jumping back to graphing. My vertex is 1, 3. What was my y-intercept? 1. Okay? And it's upside down. Okay, we don't know exactly where it crosses the x-axis because we've got an irrational number. But this is what I'm looking for. You get to this point right here, you're going to get full credit. Okay? Okay. Do you understand the difference between completing the square to find the vertex and using the quadratic formula to find your zeros? Kind of see the difference with that?
So our zero solutions, would that be the negative 2 plus or minus 6?
Yes. These are your zeros or solutions, correct. Either one of these, okay? And this is where they cross, and we don't have that exact, but that is where we cross right here. Okay? Okay. Can I go to the next one? Okay. Now, you wouldn't think that this would be one that students miss, but it is. Students miss this one a lot. Okay? You have to focus on the denominator here. To simplify this, we have to get I out of the denominator. It is completely fine for I to be in the numerator. So we are not going to worry about the I that's in the numerator. We're going to focus on the I that's in the denominator, and that's what we want to get rid of. Okay? So, I have to multiply the denominator by its conjugate. That's what I'm multiplying. The conjugate is so that I can use the difference of perfect squares to cancel out my middle terms. So if I've got 5 plus I on my denominator, what's the conjugate for that? Good. 5 minus I. Excellent. And if I multiply the denominator times 5 minus I, what do I have to do to the numerator? Same thing. Okay. So now what I need to do is I need to FOIL the top and the bottom. I FOIL the top and the bottom. So 3 times 5 is 15. 3 times negative I is minus 3I. 2I times 5 is plus 10I. 2I times negative I is negative 2I squared. Okay, now I'm going to FOIL the denominator. 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times negative I is negative 5I. I times 5 is plus 5I. I times negative I is negative I squared. Okay? I'm going to simplify. So in my numerator, I have 15 plus 7I minus 2. What is I squared? Negative 1. Students forget to put that negative 1 in for I squared. Okay, in the denominator, our 5I and negative 5I cancel. So I'm left with 25 minus negative 1, because I squared is negative 1. So my next step, I have 15 plus 7I. Negative 2 times negative 1 is plus 2. In the denominator, I'm left with 25 plus 1. So that simplifies to 17 plus 7I over 26. Some students, and I'm fine either way, split that into 2 fractions. 17 over 26 plus 7 over 26I. Okay? It's not overly difficult, but this is one that students miss often. Okay? Okay. Can I go off this screen? Okay. This is x to the 4th minus 4x to the 3rd minus 7x squared plus 22x plus 24. And I am telling you that x plus 2 and x minus 3 are factors. I'm giving that to you. I'm telling you that those are factors. Okay? So I need to find the other factors in all the zeros. So I'm going to start with my x plus 2. If x plus 2 is a factor, what's my solution? Negative 2. So that's what I put in my box. Negative 2. Then I have 1, negative 4, negative 7, 22, and 24. Okay? Okay. I bring my 1 down. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. Negative 4 plus negative 2 is negative 6. Negative 2 times negative 6 is positive 12. Negative 7 plus 12 is positive 5. Negative 2 times 5 is negative 10. 22 minus 10 is 12. Negative 2 times 12 is negative 24. Okay, and so we get a 0 there, and that's what we want. We want that 0 there. So now I am left with x to the 3rd minus x squared plus 5x plus 12. Okay? But I can't factor that. I can't factor that, but I am told what another factor is. So I can do synthetic division again. So I have my 3, because I get that from my x minus 3, because I was told that. So I bring down my 1, my negative 6, my 5, and my 12. 3 times 1 is 3. Negative 6 plus 3 is negative 3. 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. 5 and negative 9 is negative 4. 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. Okay? Now I'm left with 1x squared minus 3x minus 4. That does factor. Okay, that factors to x minus 4, x plus 1. Is that correct? Yes. Okay, so then I have 4 and negative 1 as a factor. Now, all of my factors, so I'm told 2 of my factors are x plus 2 and x minus 3. 2 more of my factors are x minus 4 and x plus 1. Those are my factors. My solutions are negative 2, positive 3, positive 4, and negative 1. Okay? So you do want to know the relationship between the solutions and the factors. Solutions and the factors. Yes? Did I make a mistake? I did? Okay. So when I factor this right here, okay, negative 4 is my product. Negative 3 is my sum. So I need two numbers that multiply to give me negative 4 and add to give me negative 3. So my numbers are negative 4 and positive 1. Okay, negative 4 positive 1 gives me negative 3. Negative 4 times positive 1 gives me negative 4. When I set this equal to 0, when I set x minus 4 equal to 0 and I solve, I get 4. Do you see that? Yeah, and that's what happened here too. Yeah. Good question. Okay, can I go to the next one? Okay. This is one that students miss all the time, and I want you to look closely at this and see if you can figure out why. Look at this and see if you can figure out what students forget. I forget the x. Okay? So this has got x to the third minus 7x squared plus 36. So I skip x to the first power. So what coefficient is associated with that x to the first power? 0. Okay? So when I do synthetic division, I have to account for that x to the first. I have to put a 0 there. Okay? Now, I'm not told what any of my zeros are. I'm not told what any of my factors are. So I've got to look at 36. And there's a bunch of them. Okay? I can have plus or minus 1 and plus or minus 2 because those go into 36 evenly. Does 3 go into 36 evenly? Yep. What about 4? Yes. 4 times 9. Surely 5 doesn't, right? Good. Does 6? Yep. What about 7? No. 8? 9? Yep. We're about to run out of them. Okay? The next one that goes into it is 12, because 12 times 3. Okay, I've got 2 more. What's 2 times what gives me 36? 18. And then my last one is 36. Okay, so we just have to start with number 1. So we do 1 and negative 1. Yes?
Okay, so like on my graphing calculator, I can just graph this and look at the x's.
And I do that sometimes.
So like on the test, you're going to count off if I like just graph it, find one of the x's.
No, it's just that everybody doesn't have a graphing calculator and you can't use Desmos.
I didn't know if you just wanted us to do trial and error so that we knew what it was.
No, because I usually do that method too. So if you have a graphing calculator, it's a great method. But I can't let you use Desmos because it's connected to the internet and all those other apps. But a graphing calculator is fine. If you've got a graphing calculator, you stick this in there, you identify where it crosses the x-axis, and you're in good shape.
I just didn't know if you wanted us to like see, I know this one is.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a good technique to see where it crosses the x-axis. Okay, I am going to go ahead and do trial and error. So I'm going to start with positive 1. I'm going to write down my coefficients. Don't forget your 0. So I have 1, I have negative 7, and I have 0. I will have a significant number of students forget to put that 0 in. Okay? Be careful. So I bring 1 down. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times negative 6. I can already tell it's not going to work, right? Okay, what do I have to have there? What do I have to have right here to know it works? A 0. Okay, and it doesn't. Okay, so I'm going to try negative 1. Okay, so I'm going to bring the 1 down. Negative 1 times 1 is negative 1. Negative 8. Negative 1 times negative 8 is 8. Is it going to work? Does it work? No, because do I get 28 here? Is that what I get? It doesn't work. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to 2. Let's see if 2 works. Bring my 1 down. 2 times 1 is 2. Negative 7 plus 2 is negative 5. 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. Okay, does it work? Nope, doesn't work. Okay, let's try negative 2. Negative 2. Bring my 1 down. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. Negative 7 and negative 2 is negative 9. Negative 2 times negative 9 is positive 18. 0 and 18 is 18. Negative 2 times 18 is negative 36. Do I get what I need? Yes, you have to have a 0 there. Okay, so I have got a factor. Or I've got a solution. So my factor here is x plus 2 because my solution is negative 2. That means my factor is x plus 2. Okay? So now I've got 1x squared minus 9x plus 18. And that factors very nicely. Okay? My product is 18. 6 and 3, but it's negative 6 and negative 3. Okay, so I have x minus 6 and x minus 3. Because negative 6 times negative 3 is positive 18. Negative 6 plus negative 3 is negative 9. Now I set those equal to 0, and that's where I get the positives. So I have x equals 6, x equals 3. So 6 and 3 are part of my solutions. So my factors are x minus 6 and x minus 3. Okay? We got one more. Then it's all you. You get to study. Okay, can I go to the next one?
Wait, I got 4. I did it. I tried figuring out 4. Did that work?
Say that again. What factor?
Like I put 4 instead of negative 2.
Okay. It doesn't work, but I can show you why it doesn't work. Can I erase this? Okay. So you're saying that positive 4 worked.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, so I put 4 right here. I bring the 1 down. 4 times 1 is 4. So I get negative 3. 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. Negative 12 here. 4 times negative 12 is positive 48. Or negative 48.
I thought it was 36.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, are we ready to look at the last one? Okay. Here's our last one, and that's a very large number. It doesn't have as many factors as you think it does because 17 is one of those factors. So negative 153, but that's probably a factor I'm not going to ask you to find. Okay? So I am telling you that plus and minus 3 are zeros. I'm telling you that. So when you get a number this large, then I'm going to tell you what one of the zeros are. I think I said factors, but plus and minus 3 are 2 of the zeros. Those are 2 of the zeros. So I'm going to go ahead and start with positive 3. And I'm going to look at each coefficient. Okay? I'm looking at each coefficient. So I'm going to bring down a 1. 3 times 1 is 3. 8 plus 3 is 11. 3 times 11 is 33. 8 plus 33 is 41. 3 times 41, is that 123? Somebody check that, please. Make sure. Okay? 123 and negative 72 is going to be positive 51. Okay? 3 times 51 is 153. Okay. So 3 is a 0. If 3 is a 0, what's the factor? X minus 3. X minus 3. Okay, now, this is x to the third plus x squared plus x plus 51. Can I factor that? Yeah, I've got to do synthetic division again. But fortunately, I was told what another solution was. So if 3 is one solution, what's the other solution? Negative 3. Okay? So I'm left with 1, 11, 41, and 51. Okay, so I'm bringing the 1 down. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. 11 and negative 3 is 8. Negative 3 times 8 is negative 24. 41 and negative 24 is positive 17. Negative 3 and positive 17 is negative 51. Okay, so this leaves me with 1x squared plus 8 plus 17. Okay, can that be factored? Can that be factored? Can't be. Okay? So if minus 3 is a solution, x plus 3 is a factor. Now, I'm going to do completing the square on this because it's a very nice completing the square. You've seen me do the quadratic formula, so I want you to see me do the completing the square.
Can you do completing the square anytime?
Yes, anytime. It always works. You will always get the correct answer. Okay. I personally do completing the square when A is 1 and B is even. That's when it makes it nice. Okay, I'm going to go to the next screen. Are we good on how I did the synthetic division here? Okay. So I have x squared plus 8x plus 17. Okay, this can't be factored. So I'm going to have to use either the quadratic formula or completing the square. Doesn't matter which one. And I'm looking for the rest of my solutions. What were the solutions I already had? Good. Okay, plus and minus 3. Okay? So, when I'm doing the completing the square to find solutions, I move that 17 to the other side. Okay? So I have to add negative 17 to both sides to get rid of it. We are dealing with two sides of the equation. That's different than what we deal with when we're trying to find the vertex formula. Vertex formula, we're only dealing with one side of the equation, so we have to add the opposites. When we're dealing with two sides of the equation, we have to add the same thing to both sides. Okay? That's the difference. So here, I've got x squared plus 8x equals negative 17. So So I am going to identify what half of 8 is. What is half of 8? 4. And what's 4 squared? So I am adding 16 to both sides. Okay? That's because I'm dealing with 2 different sides of the equation. I factor this side, and I simplify my other side. My next step is to take the square root of both sides. When I do that, I have to do plus or minus on the right-hand side. I have to. So I have plus or minus the square root of negative 1. What is the square root of negative 1? What is it? It's I. Okay? I didn't need to put parentheses there. My next step is to subtract 4 from both sides. Now, what I want you to realize here is that these are 2 different answers. This is minus 4 plus I, and it's negative 4 minus I. Okay? And this plus and minus 3, it's 3 and it's negative 3. So how many solutions do I have to this? 4. Okay, and does that fit with this right here? Should we be getting 4? Yes. Okay, whoops, I'm going to stay right there for a second. Okay. Can I move off the screen? Study for this test. Okay, this is a little bit more difficult. It's a more difficult test. The classwork from Thursday, the quiz from the chapter, and your practice test. Okay, and don't forget your rationals. Okay, I will be in my office today from 1